A complex number is an expression of the form a plus bi. So a and b happen to be real numbers. The real part, however, is this part right here, a, and so the real part of the complex number is a. The imaginary part is this part right here, the b. If you notice, it's got the bi. Well, again, what is I? I happens to be the square root of a -1. So just kind of keep this property in mind here for a second. All right, so let's start off with a few examples, and they're really not that bad. They're really actually very simple. All right, so what is the square root of a -125? Well, I think that what we can do is break this up as the square root of -1 and the square root of 125. That might be the easiest thing to do. Now, keep in mind that this part right here is what we're calling I. So I'm going to call that I. And now I'm going to break this up. This is the square root of 25 times the square root of 5. And so the square root of 25 is 5. So the answer here for this problem is 5, this 5 right here, I from the square root of -1, and then the square root of 5. So this right here would be the answer to this problem right there. Okay, now let's take a look at a couple more examples relating to complex numbers. So here, we've seen something like this before, perhaps. This is one where we would apply the square root property to solve for x. So we take the square roots of both sides, and we're going to get x equals plus and minus. Now, we know that this right here is the square root of -1 times the square root of 49. And we all know the square root of 49, it's 7. So this one is going to be plus and minus 7. And this square root of -1 happens to be I. So this is x equal plus and minus the square root, or plus and minus 7i, I should say, not the square root. All right. And then last but not least, let's take a look at this one. Okay, this one, if you're familiar with the quadratic formula, which I'm sure most of you are, what we're going to do here is we're going to apply the quadratic formula. So remember what the quadratic formula says. It says opposite b. So negative of -10, opposite b, plus and minus the square root of b squared, in this case -10 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 41. All right, so that's AC. All divided by 2 times a. So over 2 times 1. We can clean this up just a little bit. This is positive 10 right here. 10 plus and minus. Now this right here happens to be 100 minus, and 4 by 41 is 164. So 100 minus 164 is the square root of -64, and then divide by 2. Well, let's remember this right here is the square root of -1 times the square root of 64. We know the square root of -1 to be I, and the square root of 64 to be 8. So our answer here is 10 plus and minus 8i, all divided by 2. And we can simplify that just a little more. 10 divided by 2 happens to be 5, and 8 divided by 2 happens to be 4. So 5 plus and minus 4i is the solution to this quadratic. Now, if you're typing in the answer somewhere online, you might say 5 plus 4i, and then a comma, and 5 minus 4i. So most online answering systems would probably want them separated with the comma, and that's what that would look like. So good luck with your study in complex numbers.